What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're here to talk about a player on the Detroit Lions roster bubble. Today, we're talking about a player that opted out last season, so you probably forgot, at least from time to time, that he's on the Lions roster, but it was brought to my attention yesterday when we were streaming that I got to do a video on this player. And I decided I don't want to just do a highlight video. I want to talk about it because I feel like he's right on the roster bubble for the Detroit Lions. And as we get closer to training camp, man, it's that time. So let's get it started.
Way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, and we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
And welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, we're talking about the Lions roster bubble. We're going to talk about one player individually today. We'll touch on a couple others while we go through it, but this is specifically about one player. And that player is who I am calling the Forgotten Lion because it's easy to forget that he's on the team. It's no disrespect, but sometimes you just forget because he opted out last season and you forget that his contract carried over and that he's still here. And that is receiver Geronimo Allison. And this is a tough one because the Lions' new regime didn't bring him in. So we don't really know how they feel. Did they like him? Because he was already here, but he hasn't been cut yet. So that's a good thing. So that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. What do we think happens with Geronimo Allison? Well, we're going to dive into some film as we do it as well. Maybe as a refresher, but also because I don't know if I did a film video when we signed him back a year ago for the last regime. So I thought, hey, we might as well just kind of dive into all of this anyways while we have the opportunity to. Now, before we get into this video, I do have a special announcement that's coming soon, and I don't want to give it out today, but probably at the beginning of the week, it's coming soon for our Wednesday show with my man Rad. So you guys better stay tuned because this is gonna hype. And also, y'all know I'm rocking the Jamar Jefferson today. Come on, man. This thing is clean though. Hey, hold up. This is comfy. Someone else said they had one too and they got it custom. I see you, but it's comfy. So check them out. We also have that Swift one. It's very similar, but that one's long sleeve. I'm sorry. That's not. All right, so let's talk about Geronimo Allison a little bit, man. Let's just dive right into this thing. So last season, he signed a 1-year deal with the Detroit Lions. It was less than $1 million. It wasn't a super expensive contract, but aside from our top 3 guys, we had a lot of questions. And you can make the case it's similar this season. Aside from about 3 guys, you have a lot of questions about who's actually going to make the roster. And you can make a case for a lot of guys to make the roster at this point. It's still pretty early. Like I said, we're not at training camp yet. It's definitely a tough one because the Lions didn't bring in this guy. I shouldn't say the Lions didn't bring him in, but Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, they didn't bring in Geronimo Allison, so we don't know how they feel about Allison on this roster, but there is good news is that he is still here. Now, last season, he decided to opt out, obviously the COVID situation, and he said his reason for opting out, basically, just kind of paraphrasing here, he said his reason for opting out was he just had a baby, so congratulations a year later, but because of all the safety concerns, he decided to opt out for the season. He says loves football. He just decided to opt out, take care of himself. But last season, the idea was that he could have been the 4th receiver for the Detroit Lions behind Golladay, behind Marvin Jones, and behind Danny Amendola. Because after that, there were some very legitimate questions. A lot of unproven players like Chris Lacey, like Tom Kennedy. But because he opted out, obviously he wasn't playing for us. We had Marvin Hall. We had other guys that had to step up instead. But now he's back. He's back, and this receiver position is just so interesting this offseason because there's so many things you look at. We have a new receiver coach. We have a new assistant receiver coach. We have a new offensive coordinator. We have new receivers. We have a lot of change going on this offseason. No more Golladay, no more Marvin, no more Agnew, no more Amendola. It's like, what the heck is going on here? Who is actually safe? Who they actually like? And they signed so many cheap deals that the Lions didn't go out and really give a massive contract to anybody where it's like, okay, that's the dude. You know he's a lock. There's really nobody like that. You can make the case Tyrell sort of, but not really because it wasn't a long-term deal. It was still just 1 year. So for a lot of these guys, we don't really know where the Lions stand. But the player that they drafted, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think they feel pretty good about this guy. And let me just say, this dude's going to be a beast. He's going to be a stud. I was watching him again today, and the more and more I watch him, I was like, dang, I love this dude. I love this pick for the Lions. We may do another video on him. I really wanted to focus on Geronimo Allison. So Allison is a 6'3", 202-pound receiver that spent his career up until obviously landing with the Detroit Lions with the Green Bay Packers. He spent his time with that division rival, but he became a very, very big target for a guy like Aaron Rodgers. Not necessarily in terms of production, but a guy that Aaron Rodgers trusted. Rodgers had a lot of trust in Geronimo Allison. Every time he went out for a pass, he spoke very highly of Geronimo Allison. So that is good news. He has dealt with some injuries in the past, specifically in 2018, where he missed a lot of time. But also, he's had some issues in terms of drops and also some fumbles, some ball security issues. But he's also at his very high moments as well. We've seen him play both inside. We've seen him play outside. We've seen him mix at both. But I think there's one spot that's clearly better for him to play. I'm going to show you guys the relative athletic score on the screen right now. We're going to kind of take a look at the build of a guy like Geronimo Allison. I actually think this is something that could help him. I actually think this is a pro. When you talk about pros and cons, I think his build is actually good for what you've seen the Lions do this offseason. In terms of the receivers that they brought in guys that can play both inside and outside, specifically guys that have had experience doing that, but have the size to do that. And he absolutely checks those boxes at 6'3", 202. He's very similar to a lot of other receivers the Lions brought in this offseason when you consider Chad Hansen, Sage Surratt, even when they cut Jonathan Adams, Javon McKinley. There's so many guys you could go through. Damian Ratley. He's very similar in terms of build to a lot of those guys. However, there is an issue, and that's really the agility. It's the speed. He's not that quick. He's not super fast as a receiver. You can see from his 10-yard split being a 1.65. That's not very good. His 40-yard time being a 4.67. That's not very good. Only a 33-inch vertical. The athleticism is definitely lacking a little bit here, and I would say the speed is probably the biggest concern with all of this because the Lions have brought in a lot of guys that can absolutely fly this offseason. When you talk about Damian Ratley, Brashad Perriman, Tyrell Williams, that guy's got some speed as well. Lions have brought in guys that can move. Khalif Raymond, and this is not really one of them. So that's one thing that knocks. So I think his size is good. His speed maybe isn't the best thing in terms of his chances with making the team with the Detroit Lions. Now let's take a look at those stats, and we'll compare and we'll talk about the players that I think are going to be his biggest competition this offseason at the end. But let's take a look at his stats now. And you can see statistically, it wasn't a huge start. He was a former undrafted player as well, but it was 2018, which I think really where that role started to pick up, because as you see, he only played it in 5 games 2018, yet he put up some really, really strong stats. 20 receptions for 303 yards. Again, that's in 5 games, starting in only 4 of those games. So basically, this is being crazy, but he was kind of on pace for, let's say 900 plus receiving yards that season. That's pretty darn good. All right, if you would have had that, I don't think that we would have got him at the price that we did. The injury obviously slowed him down. He only played in 5 games, but in those 5 games that he did play 2019, he was playing at a pretty high level. 15.2 yards per reception. Obviously, that's very high, and 2 touchdowns while catching 66.7% of his passes. And he only had 3 drops, which it's kind of a lot of drops considering that he only played in 5 games. When targeted, his pass rating was a 121, and that's a very big deal. So every time Rodgers went to him, usually good things happened in 2018, usually. But 2019, things changed a little bit. And this is because Matt LaFleur became the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, and we know the offenses are always going to change. And they tried to take Geronimo Allison and utilize him the way that Matt LaFleur has utilized guys at his size in the past with his speed as a big slot. And let's just say it didn't go as well as they hope it would. It wasn't awful because he's done it in the past, but it was more of like in 2018, it was more of a 80% outside, 20% slot. In 2019, it was a majority of his snaps coming at slot. So it was a very big change for him, and you can see in 16 games played, he only started in 6 of those games, but in 16 games played, he had 34 receptions for 287 yards. He had less yards in 11 more games. That's not usually a good thing. He still only had 2 touchdowns, 8.4 yards per reception, catching 61% of his passes, 62%, and he had 5 drops that year with only an 87.5 pass rating when the ball was thrown his way. So numbers definitely took a step back when you consider how many games he played in. Maybe didn't get the targets that we thought he would get, but they tried to make him that big slot. He had 5 drops this season, which I'm not going to blame entirely on the fact that he moved to this position. Some of that's on him. It's always been sort of an issue with some drops, but some of it also did come from him playing that position because there are certain positions that he would be put in that he wasn't in the past, but it just wasn't the best transition. If you like PFF, you can see his grades took a pretty big step down, so it wasn't great, but they utilized him in different ways, so now he has that experience under his belt. Like I said, he flashed. There were certain occasions where it looked good. There were certain plays that he looked good, and there was an obvious benefit there. He had good size, so it made him a good threat over the middle, but I think that goes to show you that you can't just simply take a receiver that's an outside receiver and push him inside, and it's like, hey, he's going to be good at slot. He's going to be better at the slot because now he's a matchup problem. When we did that Tyrell Williams video, that's what we talked about. They did that with Tyrell, and he just took off. He was so good at doing that. Now he's excited to be with the Lions because he's going to get those opportunities again. And the Lions have reportedly been doing the same thing with Brashad Perriman. Now, Brashad Perriman has that short area quickness. Very beneficial for him if he's going to play some of that role. But for Geronimo Allison, it just seemingly was better when he was on the outside because some people were thinking he was going to break out in 2019. But like we said, it just really didn't happen after showing in 5 games that, hey, I'm pretty good. but then 2019 it just didn't really happen. So yeah, maybe not the best, but it is nice that he has that experience because, like I said, with the size, Anthony Lynn has asked his guys to move around. He likes versatile receivers because you'll see he'll move guys inside, outside. We may see that a little bit less with Allison, but I actually think that's okay because I think that's something the Lions could absolutely use is depth. When you talk about the receivers that they have, when you're going down the depth chart, I think the Lions could use another guy with this sort of build. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm saying he's going to make the team. We'll get to that at the end. But I think the Lions could use a guy with that kind of build. I personally think one of the best aspects of his game is actually his route running, okay? Now, you may think I'm crazy here, but give me a chance to explain myself when I say that because I don't think it's in all aspects as a route runner, but I think there's a lot of things that he does well. He does a little nuance as well. One issue that I think that I saw come up in 2019 specifically, because remember, they were playing him as a big slot, but he played a lot of his snaps. I mean, most of his snaps came from the slot position. So they used him in a lot of different ways. And I think some of the ways they tried to use him didn't really work out well. One issue that he seemed to have in 2019 was on those short routes. Quick routes, quick hitters from the slot position against a guy like Justin Coleman. If you go watch and play against Justin Coleman back in 2019, he struggled. He had issues there. He couldn't gain separation. Some of those short routes that they were asking him to run right off the line, he wasn't able to get away from Justin Coleman. For him, when you play him at that slot position, he did find success occasionally. And it seemed like the most success that he found from the slot position was either when he was running deep routes from slot, whether that's a deep fade, attacking deep over the middle, trying to split the safeties. This is why scheme is extremely important. It's not like Anthony Lynn took Tyrell Williams and said, hey, Tyrell, you're going to play slot every single snap. He still technically played a majority of his snaps at the outside receiver position, but he played 45, 46% of his snaps at the slot. It's how you use him. You have to make sure you use him the right way. And one thing that Geronimo Allison really lacks is that short area quickness, that short area burst. So for him, it seemingly was an issue. That seemingly was where he struggled. When he did occasionally find success, they put him in the right position to use the size to his advantage, specifically against the zone. I think he looked really good there because he was a big body over the middle, and that was awesome for Aaron Rodgers. But also, I think some of those deep routes from the slot spot, because he could get matched up, he could run a fade, he could run the back shoulder, which is something that Rodgers loves to throw anyways, or he could attack the seam, attack the middle. But on those short, quick hitters from slot, they just did not seem to work. He wasn't able to get a lot of space, and I think that's where people get worried about separation, because he doesn't get a lot of separation there. So if you're going to play him at slot, he has the ability to do it, he has the experience to do it, but at the same time, you got to make sure you're utilizing him in the right way. And that's something that Anthony Lynn has already proven to us that he's going to do. But why do I like him as a route runner? Because I feel like he's very nuanced as a route runner. He's very subtle. He does the little things. He sells fakes extremely well, but he's also very light on his toes for his size. At 6'2", 6'3", guys can be a little bit heavier in terms of change of direction. Now, I don't think he's extremely explosive out of breaks. I don't think he has that quickness in his game, but I do think he's light on his feet. And I think he changes directions really well. So double moves, just the little things he does extremely well to get himself a little bit of extra separation, just put himself in a position. And he also just has a really good feel. Attacking a zone, he has a really good feel for where the holes are in a zone. He times things really well. His timing on double moves is really good with his quarterback. So he does the little things. And I think that's a big reason that Aaron Rodgers really liked him. But I think what he really understands, and this helped him a lot playing outside, and this is why he was very successful playing the outside receiver position in 2019. I think what helped him a lot is that he understood positioning, a little bit of leverage, but he really understood positioning at a high level. He didn't have to have separation down the field because he doesn't really have that top end speed either. He's not going to blow by outside corners consistently. So the separation wasn't always there. But like Quintez Cephas a little bit, it was right at the end when he would position himself, get a couple yards separation, maybe get away with a little bit of a push off and get a little space to make a play on the football. It was the little things that he does well with his route running, which I think showed up at the outside receiver position. But he can run a variety of different routes for you. It really shouldn't be that limited. There shouldn't be a very limited route tree to me personally when I look at Geronimo Allison from the outside receiver position. Inside, I think it's more limited, but the outside receiver position, I think it's way more open to him. I think there's a lot of things they can run. He does lack some of that speed. He lacks some of that burst and explosiveness. So sometimes the separation isn't always there right away, like Perriman we've seen do, Tyrell we've seen get. But for him, he can make the little adjustments, adjust to the football when it's in the air. He understands positioning and leverage extremely well to get himself in a spot to make a play on the football. And then that brings me to my next point, which to me, he's a big target. But not only is he a big target, he also adjusts his body extremely well. And this is, again, not an easy task for bigger receivers. I think St. Brown does this extremely well as well, but he adjusts his body to the ball football in the air extremely well. And he also just has a really good connection with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you could see it. He knew when the back shoulder was coming. Just little parts of the game that each of them clicked on. It seemed very smooth. The chemistry seemed very good there. And that's something that's really going to help Jared Goff adjust his body to the football. He can kind of contort himself to get himself in position to try to make a play on the football. He can stop on a dime. He's very light on his feet. So I do like his route running. First, like I said, a big target is always beneficial, especially when you're attacking the zone, especially when he's trying to play slot, because then he has a true advantage. For a quarterback, it's easier to see those guys. Also, when plays break down, he does a really good job getting himself in a spot to try to make a play for the quarterback, try to get himself open. He doesn't really give up on plays. So special teams experience. Now, he's not probably going to be a returner, so maybe that doesn't help him a ton, but I thought I'd at least point that out. Yes, special teams experience. We could see Amon-Ra St. Brown play there a little bit as well. But then another part of his game that I think gets a little bit overlooked is some of that yak ability. Impressive. I think it's a part of his game that's very overlooked. You wouldn't think that he has it because he doesn't have great burst. He doesn't seem like the guy that would be very shifty, but that same light feet, change of direction that he has in his route running, I think shows up once the football is in his hands, especially from the outside receiver position. I think sometimes it catches guys off guard, how quick he can actually change direction, which makes him a little bit of a screen threat. But I think specifically on the outside, that's where you see it. He'll catch a comeback route and all of a sudden he'll make a move and get by the cornerback and really just kind of put on the brakes, work one way to the other. He's a little elusive. Sometimes he'll slip through some tackles, but honestly, I think you can make a case Amon-Ra St. Brown is a little bit tougher to bring down, and I know that sounds weird, but he's not really a very built guy. He's a little bit more on the slimmer side. Definitely not an N'Keal Harry. However, he's not bad after the catch. Each of his last two seasons, 2019, 2018, a third of his yards came after the catch. We know this is a very big factor for a guy like Jared Goff. Some of the parts of his game that I do like, but there are definitely concerns in his game, and there's some more major concerns than other. One issue in his game, and this is something that's been brought up, and a lot of people understand that this has been an issue in his game, is ball security. Now, I don't just say that in terms of fumbling. I'll say that in terms of dropping passes. I'm going to throw him in the same category here because he has had some issues with drop passes. It seems like, I wouldn't even know if I would call it a concentration drop. I don't know what I would call it, but he does have some drops that you would, want him to catch. So I'm not saying they're the easiest, but you'd want him to catch it. He also does have a tendency to get a little bit ahead of himself and not make sure he secures the football. Sometimes he'll try to take off before that hit gets there, knowing that he's going to get hit. You can see he gets a little bit, thinking about that. He tries to take off before the ball's in his hands, and then he leaves it there. He doesn't come up with the catch. Some of those sideline catches. He just has some drop issues. He has had some drops, 8 in 2019, 2018 combined. It's not a ton, but it is kind of a lot considering the amount of targets that he got, which is kind of concerning. He doesn't have extremely strong hands. I think that's the best way to explain it. Playing through contact, trusting himself to play through that contact and holding the football is a little bit of an issue in his game. Trusting himself to take a hit and hold onto the football, that's kind of a problem. Sometimes it catches him off guard. He's not really expecting the hit. It almost looked like he's kind of caught off guard when he does get hit, and I think that was a big issue from slot as well when we saw his jump, when he saw him have 5 drops, because it was almost like sometimes he get hit as soon as he caught it, and you're going to do that. That's why if you're playing slot, you got to be a strong, tough-minded dude. And that's what St. Brown brings. That's why he's going to be a beast. But Allison playing slot, sometimes he looked just a little bit shook when he got hit as soon as he caught it, and he wasn't able to come up with some of those passes. So drops have been an issue occasionally. But a big issue also is fumbling, and he has had some fumble issues as well. He had 3 in 2018, 2019 combined. He had 2 years before that. The guy has had some fumble problems. Now, not always has it been recovered by the other team, but again, it's just, finishing off the play, holding on the football through contact. He just doesn't do it extremely well. It just doesn't seem like he has extremely strong hands. I don't know what it is. Justin Coleman punched it out of his hands one time and it flew out of bounds. It is a little bit concerning because change of possessions change games. You lose one change, you turn it over one time, it can be the complete difference in the game. One drop can change the whole momentum of a game. So those are big factors. Even though they don't show up a ton, they have shown up more than the amount of times that you would say, okay, it's not even something I have to mention. If it's 1, 2 drops, okay. It's 5, 3, and you're only getting 20, 30 receptions, that's something that's worth noting as a little bit concerning. I mentioned before, separation underneath. You attack the right defense and you scheme it up well enough where you have a guy running free like Anthony Lynn did just countless times to Tyrell Williams, well, then obviously we're in a different situation. He ran drags from the outside receiver position underneath, and that can work. But if he's mashed up one-on-one press coverage from the slot, he just struggled to get separation consistently. I would probably bet that he would struggle to get some separation on the outside in the same situation as well. But for him, he played a lot more of that Z receiver when he played the outside, which meant he was off the line of scrimmage, which meant that it was a little bit tougher to press him, which gave him a little bit extra time. And I think for him, that helped him as well. Usually you get cornerbacks playing a little bit more off when they're on the outside as opposed to the slot, when they're usually playing a lot tighter to the line of scrimmage and you have to beat them right, and you have to get that separation early. So for him, he kind of avoided exploited that a little bit more playing on the outside, but some of that separation underneath can absolutely be lacking. His cuts out of breaks, some of that explosiveness out of breaks is a little bit slow, as I mentioned before. He is just not great. He doesn't have fantastic top-end speed. He's a little bit like Cephas and some of the vet things that he does. I think Cephas does a lot of similar things to Geronimo Allison. When you watch some of the big plays Cephas has made at Wisconsin, or you watch it with the Lions, he's not running by guys consistently because he doesn't have that kind of speed. Routes well, but he's also very good to tracking the ball, adjusting to the ball, and positioning himself, getting himself in a position where the defender cannot make a play on it, just kind of getting an extra yard or two of separation right before the ball hits his hand. So it's the little things that he does well, and I think those are very important.
Also, I think it's at least worth mentioning that he seemed to make a lot of his money over the middle of the field. And I know Goff likes to attack the middle of the field a lot because he's a big body threat. He can fit in the holes in a zone. So for him, playing the slot position, he can attack deep middle, but he made a lot of plays over the middle of the field.
That begs the question. Does the dude make the team? After saying all that, does Geronimo Allison make the team? And he's in a weird spot. See, I initially thought about this. My initial thought was no way. I don't think it was just no. I don't think Geronimo Allison makes the team. The Lions didn't bring him in. That was my initial thought. But then I started to think about it and try to look from the other point of view. And I have a couple of thoughts for both sides. First off, the Lions had 3 players opt out last season: John Adkins, Russell b.godly, and Geronimo Allison. Who's the guy that's not cut yet? It's Geronimo Allison. Now, I know that doesn't necessarily mean he won't get cut. My point is, though, the 2 guys that opted out last season, that these guys did not bring in, this new staff, they already cut those players. He had not cut Geronimo Allison yet. So maybe he's shown enough so far that they want to see more. They want more competition there. And it would make sense. Receiver is kind of open. I think defensive line is a little bit more what we have at defensive line with John Pennicini and Lee McNeil. Maybe a little bit more with offensive line too. Maybe. I mean, you have Drake Jackson, so I don't really know. But either way, the fact is he's still on the team, which I think is very important. Also, I like the fact that he has the size and the build. When I look at the Lions receivers, I see Tyrell Williams, I see Parham, and I see Amon-Ra St. Brown. And those 3 to me are locks to make the team, no question.
I also really like the scheme fit, probably because he was with Joe Philbin in 2019, who was with the Dolphins, but he played in a spread offense, which is good, and you can see he knew when to use him at slot. In this situation, he's the big slot, one-on-one matchup, you put him inside, and you can use his size to advantage. Not all the time.
Now, to me, Quintez Cephas is kind of the weird one. Cephas is the guy that, yeah, potentially could get cut, but I just can't bring myself to say that he would. Even though he wasn't brought in by this regime, so I don't know how you feel about him. He doesn't have that kind of speed. He is a good possession receiver. He doesn't bring the speed to the table, but I just feel like he's going to make the team. It would surprise me if he was cut. But even then, it's only 4 receivers. And then it comes down to, who else are you keeping? Are you keeping 6 receivers? I think the Lions probably keep 6. Usually that's what they've done. To me, I think they're going to keep one of the 2, Khalif Raymond or Victor Bolden. If they kept both, obviously that's going to make it really tough for Geronimo Allison, but I think they'll at least keep one of those. I don't think they need to keep both, but I think they'll at least keep one. Gadget piece, like Tavon Austin was. Kind of a gadget piece. So I think both those guys are fighting for that. Similarly, they can both return kicks and punts. So I think one of those guys will make the team. And let's just say that's 5 receivers right there. Then the question comes down to, can he be that 6th receiver? And I actually think the Lions need a guy like that plays a little bit more on the outside. If it's maybe just similar enough where the Lions are very confident with what they have in terms of their depth. If the Lions go 6 receivers, let's say they keep a Khalif or a Victor Bolden as the 5th because they want to have kind of that gadget guy. Cephas makes the team, which I believe he will. Remember, Cephas only played 20% of his snaps last season at slot. Very similar to what Geronimo Allison did back in 2018 when he was very successful playing the outside receiver position, playing it majority of the time. So Cephas proved to us last season, yes, in a different scheme, yes, brought in by a different regime, but he proved to us last season he could play at the outside spot and be a deep threat target. 10 yards per target, which is what Allison had in 2018, was 10.1. So he proved to us he can be the outside threat.
I like Cephas a lot. His ability to line up at the X was very impressive. Here he is at the top of your screen. They're going to go bunch formation. He's the outside receiver. He's just going to kind of do a deep curl. But what I like about Quintez Cephas is just how competitive he is. But also, I mean, I feel like he had the trust of Matthew Stafford. Stafford targeted him 10 times in his first game.
Now, he had his hiccups, he had his drops, tracked the ball, yes, but he was also very young. He's still in his rookie deal, and that's a benefit, I think, for Cephas as well. He's still young, he's still growing. And he's no Golden Tate after the catch, but he can be sometimes a little slippery. It's not like he's going to make guys miss consistently. I think you could argue Geronimo's better after the catch. But if the Lions are going to keep a guy like Cephas, who is kind of similar in terms of the way they are built, sort of, a little bit, but has also played a lot of outside receiver, then I don't think the Lions maybe feel like they need to keep a guy like Geronimo Allison, because then they could take a shot on saying, okay, we'll keep Bolden too, or okay, we'll keep Ratley, or we're going to keep one of UDFAs, whether that's McKinley or Sage or something like that on the team, or Chad Hansen. We may go something like that, kind of go a little wild card in there, because we feel confident in what we have, because Cephas is going to be that depth guy that can play a lot on the outside because he proved it last year. I don't think there's any issue with having another outside that can play Z and X receiver, and I think that's actually better at the outside. And certainly, occasionally, you can put him in the inside because he has the build and versatility and experience to do it. You just have to make sure you're utilizing him in the right situations. I think that's a good fit. However, then you talk about the competition that he has. And he's got some very legitimate competition. Not necessarily proven competition, but assuming those first, 5 or whatever I just said, those guys make it. Who would be his main competition to me for that 6th spot? Well, there's a lot of guys similar to him. There's Damian Ratley. Now, Damian Ratley, the biggest difference here is much faster. He's all 6'2". They have a very similar build. He's much faster. Doesn't have a lot of production, but he's a deep threat. He's a deep threat, just like Geronimo Allison proved he could be in 2000 and in 2018. And he can play slot as well. So Ratley's going to be some competition. Chad Hansen, this is a big one. Very similar build, very similar RAS scores. They're very similar in terms of the way that they are built and the athleticism that they have. And the issue with Chad Hansen for a guy like Allison is that Chad Hansen was brought in by the Lions and he's played with Jared Goff back in college. That's a little bit of an issue. Even though Allison got on the right page with Aaron Rodgers, it's a little bit concerning for him that Chad Hansen is here because that's someone that Goff knows, and I'm sure he had a say in bringing in Chad Hansen. Sage Surratt. Sage Surratt is not the exact same as Allison. Allison has a little bit more get up. He's a little bit lighter on his feet. They're both usually making contested grabs. Now, like I said, I do like Allison's route running. Sage's route running isn't bad either because if it was, he would have never got open. He's also a guy that makes plays at the point of attack, a lot of contested grabs as well. Thing is, he's just very unproven. He was the UDFA, but he was someone that the Lions like. McKinley. McKinley's got a little more speed. He's got a similar build, and he was given $100,000 guaranteed by this regime. Draft or not, he was given $100K guaranteed by this regime. I know what you're thinking. Okay, hey, why are you in the car? It's because we haven't been here in a while. Well, no, that's not actually the reason. The reason is my ending actually got deleted, but it gave me time to think about this. So the question is, the verdict, do I think he'll make the team? Look, I don't think it's any coincidence that Victor Bolden was listed as a running back. I could see a scenario where the Lions keep Khalif Raymond, cut maybe Dedrick Mills, keep Victor Bolden, label him as a running back, have that be the 4th running back, and keep their fullback, Jason Kabinda. Also, I think if you're going to play spread concepts, though, you might value receiver a little bit more, and that could lead the Lions to keeping 7 receivers, but Bolden could potentially play both. Maybe the Lions make it work out where they can keep 7 receivers instead of the 6. There are some connections here. Some interesting ones, not really direct, not saying this helps him, but there are connections. He spent time with Dom Capers back in his early stages with Green Bay, 2016, 2017. Even though they probably didn't talk a lot, he was with Dom Capers. Also, Joe Philbin was the Miami head coach. When he got fired, that's when Dan Campbell took over. Joe Philbin was also the offensive coordinator of the Packers in 2018 when he was the outside receiver there. So he know how to use him, which means I'm thinking that maybe Campbell took some schematic things from him. Maybe not. Maybe though, because he also ran the zone rushing scheme. And if he made it work, he knew how to use Allison. Maybe that means that a guy like Dan Campbell could. So there's not like direct connections, but there are certainly some sort of connections here as well. I think you could argue he's the safest option because he does have the most experience. He probably has the most production. But at the same time, do you want to take that over potentially a young guy like Javon McKinley or Sage Surratt? You can put those guys on the practice squad. You can't put Allison there, but they could be picked up. They could be taken somewhere else. You can't protect them every week, right? You could lose those guys if you put them on the practice squad. $100K guaranteed to McKinley, right? I mean, it's not a ton, but it's only 8 times what Allison. Okay, that sounds like a ton when I say it like that, but you know what I'm saying. Or you could go with speed. You could bring Damian Ratley. Damian Ratley stay here. Or Chad Hansen, who actually has a connection with Jared Goff. It's interesting. The Lions will have to choose something here. This is assuming that Cephas makes the team. But we'll probably do a video on Chad Hansen soon. But comment down below, do you think Geronimo Allison makes the team? I think I'm leaning towards no. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching. We enjoying the car life, and it's hot. Dang, I'm sweating. And I'm out.